Could you give me a quick overview of your career for people that don't know you specifically?
I started out in the tech world. I was a Visual Basic programmer, PHP, back when I was 15. That was my first job. I started making websites, made my own website, and I got really interested in Jackie Chan movies, Hong Kong movies. I started reviewing them on the website. And after reviewing 500 of these movies, by the time I was 17 or 18, I started thinking, man, what would it take to make something like this? Because I love the style. I love kind of the language of action that they're doing in these movies. Because I was obsessed. I'd go down to Chinatown in San Francisco, right outside here right now. Every weekend I'd buy a bunch of video CDs. And so we took American indie filmmaking and combined it, by reverse engineering Hong Kong cinema too. At the same time, we went out and we just made our own little backyard action films. And at that time, technology was at a point where you could digitally edit your film and put it on a hard drive. Yeah. And it was just at that point. And distribution was not really at that point. There was no YouTube. We had to put a little thumbnail-sized video online. But over the years, that technology just emerged where we could release 1080p videos on YouTube for free. And that was a long process. Did a lot of short films. Did a few feature films too. I did a feature film for $5,000 called Contour. And I think it's still in the stores. It's called The Agent. And did a feature film called Death Grip, which was $110,000. That did not do so well. That was kind of when the video market started declining. And throughout all this, I learned how to wear so many different hats. I knew how to write, not well, but I knew how to write. I knew how to edit. I could do previs. I could do choreography, camera, and performance, obviously directing, editing, sound design, distribution, sales, DVD. Authoring, back when you did authoring. I don't even think you can author anymore.
I don't think so.
I think it's like you can't do it anymore. I opened Encore the other day, it didn't work. And so throughout all these things, this new sort of industry popped up called previs. And within the CG world, it makes sense because you're trying to plan for your shoot so that you get your visual effects and your camera team essentially on the same page. For action, these guys at 8711 were really the ones that really pioneered previs. And they did it first on The Matrix with Yuen Ping's team. But then with Serenity, they were putting sound design, lots of editing. They did wire work. They had props, all this stuff at their studio. And they really made previs they really brought previs to another level to give a look at the action before anything was even shot. And I got pulled into that because I could do all that stuff. But I really missed doing the live action stuff, and I would still keep doing short films on the side. That was where my passion was. I loved doing it. Whenever I would get brought into a big budget film to be on camera, there wasn't much chance to apply what I knew about action filmmaking, which is the camera should be here for this kind of kick. But they don't really want to hear that from a stunt guy.
You were just hired to do the kick.
You're supposed to do the kick. And if you're the coordinator, you're supposed to come up with the kick. And where the camera guy is really none of your business a lot of the time. And you're definitely not going to give editing notes because the editor hasn't been hired yet. And that's tough because then you have no idea what your quality of product is going to be. Sometimes you get these one-offs where they hire the whole package, right? Like when I did this movie called Man Who Feels No Pain, I action directed it, and the director came to me, saw my film Rope-a-Dope. He said, I want to do Rope-a-Dope style action in Bollywood. I said, your actors have to do their own stunts, so we got to train them. You got to let us control where the camera goes, and you got to give me a first pass at the edit, and I'll do your sound design too.
Because you want to get close to the actors in the scenes, and you want them to move well.
It just the way that I wanted to shoot it was that we didn't lie at all about what the actors were doing. I didn't want to double the actors. I didn't want to do it at all. And the director, without even blinking, said, sure, no problem. I was like, okay. So, and we did it. And when you see this movie, you'll see that the fight scenes are very different than your typical Bollywood movie. There aren't people floating around on wires. The editing's not jumpy and crummy. I'll be honest, I don't really like the editing that they usually do. But in this one, it was very vertically integrated from beginning to end. I mean, even the previs process, we were talking to the director every day about, we needed a better weapon for the female, right? So we added a scarf. As the action team, we came up with a scarf. And he said, yeah, let's write it in. So she has a scarf from the beginning of the movie, right? Like, that is strong. If you just add it in the fight, then it has no meaning throughout the film. But now it's a piece of her character.
Yeah.
So that kind of director, Vassan Bala was the director of that one. When you get those kinds of chances, that's great. But typically those aren't the kinds of movies that you get. Usually you get the ones where you're a cog in the machine. You're expected to turn a certain way. There's an art to that for sure, but I tend not to do well doing that.
But after that, you had a little pivot going into mocap to play unknown character in the God of War series, Kratos.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
When they called me in to do Kratos for God of War, it was as if I was going back into making an indie film again, because the camera guy was there. We were talking about how the scene would be edited, even though there's no editing, right? Because it's a one-shot game. But everything was kind of integrated at the same time. We were talking about how the combat and the writing and everything was kind of happening at the same time with mocap, because in games, if you don't do everything at the same time, then there's going to be a glitch and the game's going to break. And it was actually much easier to perform in that situation than it is in a Hollywood film, because you kind of know what the final product is going to look like. Now, if it's a cinematic where you don't know where the camera's going to be, then you don't know what's going to happen. But if you're playing the main character, you know that the camera's always here on you.
So how does that affect the way you move and the way you prep for that character?
It just requires constant reminding that the camera's here, and sometimes I would make suggestions based on that. And they would say, we're trying to show the character a little bit more, and we want you to do this move, we want you to do this move. And I said, could it be this? Because if we do this, I can turn toward the camera and you can see my face.
And
right?
you get a nice line of action and silhouette.
Exactly. Yeah. Then I would suggest a move that was kind of like a jumping drop kick. And they'd say, well, if you do that, you're not going to really see the kick, and it's not exactly what the character does, but the camera's not right for that, right? So it definitely affects it. I think that anybody who's on camera should know where the camera is at all times so that they can be performing for the camera. And when you're an NPC, it's a little bit different. You could be anywhere, so it's just going to look wherever the camera is, it's going to look like that. But as a main character, then you're performing for the camera.
And on the mocap floor, like, communicating and collaborating with this team that knows specifically what they need in terms of video games, but you as a performer, you're more used to films, I guess. What were the major learnings that you had in this experience that has actually changed the way you worked, or evolved at least? With
live action film, there's so much leeway for performance, where if you in a short film, you punch a guy and you can just kind of stand however you want. But in a game, you start at idle, you punch, you better get back to idle. You're going to be doing a lot of takes.
And the footing needs to be right.
Exactly, the footing needs to be right. The shoulders have to be right. Everything needs to be. It's like, and at a certain point, what you're basically doing is you're saving the editors hours and hours of time, and they like that. Yeah. They really like it when you just hit that pose and they don't really have to do anything.
Editors being the animators.
The animators.
Like pushing the data and changing the timing to improve it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, the job of a performer is to make the job of the animators as easy as possible. And give them, just make it so that they look at the data and they say, I really don't have to do anything with that. I get to go home early and see my family tonight. Yeah. I think about that stuff, because my job's easy. I got an 8-hour day. These guys almost never have an 8-hour day. So I'm always thinking about that, and it's extremely important. I'm serious. When performers go on these volumes, they should really think about that stuff. We got it pretty easy.
Yeah. So, trying to give the best.
Give the absolute best. And then if it means doing another take, another fall, whatever it is, if it takes you 10, 15, if it takes you 1 minute to do another take, it's going to save that team 5 hours.
Yeah.
So I definitely take that into account more now than ever, because I like to go around and talk to the animators if I'm allowed to and see what they're doing with it too. And it's like, okay, well, when I do that with my foot, is that causing you a problem? They go, oh yeah, it's not ideal. It's like, well, someone tell me then, and then they're being nice. Don't be nice.
Yeah.
Tell me what you need, because we're the body.
Yeah. And then we're starting from your performance as a blueprint, and we try to elevate it and adapt it to the needs of the game.
Yeah.
But if we're able to capture the best performance on set in terms of timing or posing, or at least the fluidity that we seek, this is great. Then you guys can offer that.
That's the idea. That's the offering.
Yeah. Before I ask my last question, where can people follow you online or at least reach out if they want to contact you?
My YouTube channel is probably the best. You just look up Eric Jacobus, youtube.com/Eric Jacobus official. And we have a motion capture company now called SuperAlloy Interactive, SuperAlloyInteractive.com. And we are making motion capture for entertainment, and it can be for games or movies. And we're really interested now in doing short films with mocap because we have our own system. And after watching Neil Blomkamp's shorts and seeing how he uses Unity to make short films that are incredibly immersive, then it just inspired us. We said, well, wait a minute, we have the talent, we have all the bodies that we need. Let's just get the technology and start doing this. And so that's going to be where we start putting that stuff too.
Yeah, now that it is accessible. And that actually connects perfectly with my last question, which is, Eric, what's your definition of creativity?
You're never really going to make anything new. Everything's been created. All you can do is alloy things together. Sometimes that means that in your given industry, you've got a lot of people doing what you do. Maybe you're an iron worker, right? You got a lot of people that mine iron with you. And if you walk away from that to try and do something else with iron, then they might give you the stink eye. But what you can then do is you take the iron over to these other metal companies, these other metal mines, and you alloy those things together and you make steel. And then steel, you make an economy with it. And then you have medical tools, you've got stainless steel, you've got better construction materials. That's why we call our company SuperAlloy. Because when you alloy tech with action, which are such disparate fields, they just don't talk very much. But when you can bridge those two things together, then it's like you can tell the story of action in whatever way the technology will allow it. And if you can harness that technology and deal with the fact that you're going to be kind of out in the desert, out in the wilderness for a little while, figuring this stuff out, and then boom, you have something, and then now it's like, okay, now you've created, right? And I think that's what creativity is. It's just taking things that are there already and combining them in ways that nobody's ever done it before. It's like a good joke. Good jokes are the same thing. Jokes are not new. You just take this thing and that thing. Nobody thought of putting those things together. Ha!
I totally agree. Thank you so much for sitting with me. Man. That was great.